And we're honored to have with us Jonas Dew, who is the editor-in-chief for the Columbia Sundial. He is a student at Columbia University. Jonas, good to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Jonas, I know that you have been providing eyewitness accounts of these encampments. Give our listeners an idea of what you have seen.
Absolutely. So it's been a crazy scene out here at Columbia University, one of the top universities in the world, but you wouldn't know it from stepping on campus. A lot of people would describe the last 2 weeks as just a complete war zone here in Morningside Heights, Manhattan. And so what has happened is as soon as our university president, Manu Shafiq, went to Washington, D.C. to testify to Congress about campus anti-Semitism, the pro-Palestinian protesters have set up camp on the lawns, and they've been there ever since. Even after the police came and arrested over 100 of them, they set it back up, and they've closed down the gates, but everyone else, all the other students from New York City who support the movement are coming into the neighborhood and protesting through into the night. And it's been like that pretty much every day for the last 2 weeks. And, there's no end in sight. We have finals coming up, and they're trying to negotiate with the protesters with no avail.
So we understand, Jonas, the latest reporting is that 2 o'clock Eastern is the deadline the university set. The problem with that is that they've set so many other deadlines that have come and gone with no consequences. Do you think the students are going to obey this upcoming directive at 2 o'clock?
Absolutely not. And so what has happened is the university president has been sending updates to everybody in the community saying, we're negotiating. If they don't come by midnight, we're to consider alternative measures. And then they pushed it another 48 hours. And then they just kind of let that lapse. And now they're handing out notices to the campers saying, hey, look, we know who you are. And if you don't leave by 2 p.m., we're going to suspend you. You're not going to be able to finish the semester. And the reaction has been completely expected, which is they're not even reading the notices. They've vowed to stay there until Columbia divests, which I don't think is ever going to happen. And they've basically written in big red letters on these notices, Columbia will burn. And they've been posting that all over social media. So, nobody's really going to leave because of this.
Jonas, I'm curious if you've had a chance to talk to other students, classmates, friends. What's the general mood of the university, would you say? Are they supporting the Hamas crowd or the Jewish students?
Well, I think that the majority of Columbia students are very sympathetic to the protesters. I think they support what they would call, Palestinian liberation or whatever, and they would probably align more with the Palestinian cause than the Israeli cause. But Columbia does have one of the largest Jewish student bodies of any U.S. university. It's around 20% of students are Jewish. And so I've had the chance to talk with many of them, and a lot of people are actually very sympathetic towards the anti-Semitism that has been rampant on campus, throughout since October 7th, but especially in the month of April. So I do think that the majority of students, at least, did not like that the NYPD was called in to arrest students, even though, the protesters were breaking numerous university rules.
I'm curious, your editor-in-chief of the Columbia Sundial, is that like an alternative student newspaper? And if so, have you guys taken a position editorial on what's going on?
So we are not the main newspaper of Columbia. That is the Columbia Spectator. We're a campus magazine. We're a monthly magazine that does investigative journalism and commentary. And so we have refrained from taking an explicit stance just because this is such a controversial issue. But we have been out in the field. We have been reporting. None of our staff members are sort of actively involved in any of the protests on either side. So we've sort of approached the issue from more of a neutral standpoint. And we've the Columbia Daily Spectator, on the hand, they've taken a very pro student protester stance. Pro, like the university should listen to student protesters and not call in the police and let them encamp, basically. Which is not the position that we're taking.
All right. Well, Jonas, really appreciate the intel there, and it ought to be interesting around 2 o'clock Eastern, folks, is when they're saying the deadline will come, and whether or not the students will go, we shall see. Jonas, be safe out there.
Thank you very much.
All right. Jonas Dew from Columbia University, a student there and editor-in-chief of the magazine, Columbia Sundial.